If we were to travel through a marsh in Barrington, would we be looking for a cryptid, some type of ghost activity, UFOs? We don't know.
Hello and welcome to the Weird Around Illinois podcast. Today we are going to talk about one of our favorite places, Barrington, Illinois, and our visit to Cuba Marsh, where we were looking for whatever's there. Let's get weird. To start with, why don't we talk about Barrington again? I know we've talked about it on a few other podcasts. There's just a lot of stuff that has happened in Barrington, even though you couldn't prove it by us. I know, there have been sightings of Mothman in the area, there have been sightings of aliens in the area, but probably it's most closely associated with ghosts, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, there have been many different ghost sightings in different parts of Barrington. Like, for example, Rainbow Road, which is, I think, like right next to Cuba Road.
Yeah, not too far from Cuba Marsh.
Those two roads have apparently been known to be like some of the most haunted roads in Illinois.
It's also not too far from that cemetery on Cuba Road, which...
It was like White Cemetery, right?
Yeah, that's it. I couldn't remember the name. So this is actually how we discovered Cuba Marsh. We were doing paranormal investigations in that cemetery and on Rainbow Road, and we're driving by this forest preserve area, and we're like, wow, that's a nice looking forest preserve. That looks like some terrain where you could see, Bigfoot or Dogman or Mothman or anything. You couple that with those mysterious cryptid reports we had from some of our listeners or viewers, and it just seemed like a no-brainer that we had to go and visit Cuba Marsh at some point. We were waiting all winter to do this, actually, because we wanted to do it when the weather was warm and we could spend a little bit more time out there. We picked a really nice day for it, as I recall.
Yeah. It was during the afternoon, so it wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. It's really good.
It's always kind of tricky with these things, because if you're looking for cryptids or ghosts, you'd love to be out there at night. But so many of these areas that we're visiting are like public areas, like forest preserves and state parks and things like that, where they actually kick you out after dark. So, we have to kind of balance our desire to find something with our desire to not end up in jail. We do have a couple locations where we've got like special permissions and stuff to go in and look around, and we're hoping to get more of those as we go along. But since this was our first trip to Cuba Marsh, we thought it would be good to just take a nice daylight stroll through there and see what the terrain looks like. In terms of, our approach, it was pretty simple. There's one big path that branches off in several different directions there. We kind of took the longest cross section of that path to walk all the way through the marsh. We stuck to that, and we took a couple of little offshoots from time to time through more wooded areas. We did bring some equipment with us to check things out. Not all of our gear, but a couple things.
Yeah, we had, I think 3 out of the 4 of us had cameras in different directions. We got a new microphone set. We have EMF detectors, spirit. Did we bring a spirit box? I
brought that mini spirit box that I have, the one that goes through 7 frequencies.
Oh, okay, that was like a radio looking thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I forgot about that.
It seemed a little weird to bring the spirit box and the EMF detector with us in broad daylight, but there's just so much paranormal activity recorded around there. I really felt like we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't have something like that on us.
Yeah, that's fair.
Felt really under-equipped without my night vision camera with me, but without having the actual darkness to use it in, there was really no point in bringing it. So I had to hold something.
Yeah, it doesn't have any audio either, so
right.
There wasn't really a point in using it.
Right. So we went through these areas, and the first thing I noticed is that there are a lot of people out there.
Yeah, it was more populated than the other places we've been.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we ended up coming across anyway is I don't know where this started, but maybe 1/4 through the trail, we found this little almost tunnel, to be honest, from the first look at it.
Yeah.
It went into these deep forests.
There were a couple of those. Remember we went through the first one and it was kind of short but dark, and then the second one, it looked like a mini version of like a redwood forest from the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I can see that.
I remember looking at it and thinking, wow, Bigfoot.
Yeah, that'd be a good house for him.
Yeah.
A more clear space.
Right.
The scenery was really cool in those areas, but yeah, it was almost like a secret trail at the same time.
Right, and nobody else was going through those areas.
No, it seemed like a shortcut to us at first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess I should backtrack a little bit and say, what we were looking for. As you kind of alluded to at the beginning, we had no idea what we were looking for. We just know Barrington is one of those weird places where it seems like anything can happen, so we were just going to put ourselves out in the woods and see what came at us.
Hey, Cuba Road, Cuba Marsh, there has to be something in common.
When I saw those woods and thought Bigfoot, we actually got into a little discussion about it. It's like, hey, nobody's ever spotted Bigfoot out here, but that doesn't mean he's not here. This is Barrington. Anything can happen. And so we strolled through all that. We checked out the woods. We checked out the path. We got, pretty far down that path. I think we got almost to the end of it. And then turned around and came back. And it wasn't until the way back that I kept the EMF detector on. I'd used it in a couple isolated locations until then. And you guys kept commenting that, what's that beeping sound?
Yeah, no, like, I heard it, like I was the only one hearing it at one point. Then like slowly everybody began to realize that was a noise.
Yeah, and I was arguing with you because every time I looked at it, it was completely zeroed out. So.
Yeah, but I clearly hear the noise. It was identical.
Yeah, and then finally I caught it. It was one of those things where it just spiked and then went away.
Yeah, it kept going as we were walking.
Mm-hmm.
Like once we stopped, it went away. We kept walking, it started.
So I immediately started testing each of us with it, to make sure it wasn't like a cell phone or a camera or something like that triggering it, and it was none of us.
Yeah, I always think that's a phone that does that, but it never works when we really try.
Sometimes the electronics in a car it'll pick up on, and certainly power lines and things like that will trigger it, but our phones seem to do nothing for the EMF.
Yeah, there was no car. I'm not really sure about any other electrical areas.
No, we were in the middle of nowhere. I mean, we were in the middle of that marsh. They couldn't have power lines anywhere near there.
Yeah.
So it was really strange, and I started getting some sustained signals. And the really weird part is the signals seemed to be low. Like when I pointed it at the ground, they would actually spike and then go away.
An underground UFO.
Yeah.
That's what's going on here.
Yeah, could be. Well, I mean, that's kind of what they're looking into at Skinwalker Ranch. It was all set to say that we found absolutely nothing on that trip, but those were some of the weirdest EMF spikes I think we've ever had, because it did actually hit the red zone a couple times and went away on its own. Whether we moved or didn't move or whatever, it was just like this whatever was spiking this thing was like moving. It would appear and disappear, and it was really strange.
Yeah.
And then when we were almost back, I remember you spotted something.
Yeah, I spotted a deer.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something like amazing to see, at least in my opinion, but it was kind of cool.
Well, I know in all the Bigfoot shows, they always get excited when they see deer because they always think there's food for Bigfoot. So
yeah, that's true.
I think certainly, in Illinois, it could be food for Bigfoot or food for Dogman. So I think it's still significant when you see deer, even though we know they're all over the place.
I was kind of hopeful to find ghosts somewhere, especially since it was near Cuba Road, but it didn't give me any like ghostly vibes at all.
Yeah, nothing much. I mean, obviously some cool scenery, quite a bit to look at, but nothing that would really scream cryptids, paranormal, nothing like that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious if we were to go back there at night, if it would be a different vibe. And that, we'll have to check around, see if we could get some kind of permission to do that at some point. But hunting for ghosts in the daytime is usually a losing proposition. But the fact that we got electromagnetic activity makes me wonder if maybe it is worth going back at night sometime.
Yeah.
Well, that was our trip to Cuba Marsh in Barrington. If you have any experiences there or elsewhere in Barrington or elsewhere in and around Illinois, we would love to hear about them. Feel free to leave comments in the comments section or fill out our anonymous report form. As always, thank you for listening and thank you for subscribing.